but on the way back, he left me on the side of the road and sped off. A short while later, in a spot with cell service, just as I was about to call for help, I received a call from the police. Your car went over a cliff an hour ago, with your husband and your sister-in-law inside. When I arrived at the scene, I was shattered by the sight. The faint morning light crept through the slats of the blinds, casting hazy streaks across the thick comforter. I stirred awake, my nose twitching at the rich aroma of fried bacon and brewing coffee wafting in from the kitchen. Out of a habit formed over 3 years, I reached to my side for that familiar warmth, but touched only a cold, empty space. When had Tom gotten up? This was utterly bizarre. As a sales director, Tom's work was a whirlwind of stress, and on weekends like this, he would absolutely not leave the bed until the sun was high in the sky. I rubbed my eyes, threw on a thin robe, and stepped out of the bedroom, a mix of curiosity and a vague, indescribable unease rising within me. Before me was a scene I would never have dared to imagine, not even in my wildest dreams. Tom was wearing my pink floral apron, looking both comical and pitifully clumsy as he flipped bacon with a spatula. On the dining table, 2 mugs of hot coffee were already poured, steam curling up beside a plate of golden brown toast. Seeing me standing dumbfounded in the kitchen doorway, Tom turned and flashed a smile as bright as the sunshine outside. "Morning, sleepyhead. Go brush your teeth and wash up, then come have breakfast. Today, I'm showing off my skills just for you." I walked closer, wrapped my arms around his waist from behind, and pressed my face against his broad, sturdy back, whispering, "Did the sun rise in the west today, or did my husband do something to feel guilty about? Did you secretly buy some expensive new tech gadget and now you're trying to butter me up?" Tom turned around and gently kissed my forehead. His eyes, looking at me, were filled with love. Yet deep within them, there seemed to be something else, something different that I couldn't name. He stroked my hair, his voice low and warm. "You silly goose, do I need a reason to spoil my wife? I've felt we've been a bit distant lately, and I wanted to rekindle things. After breakfast, let's go for a drive up to the Rockies. I want to take you hiking, breathe in that fresh mountain air." I hesitated. Honestly, I just wanted to drive out to Kansas to visit my mom. My sister said she's been having a lot of joint pain lately. Besides, my health has never been great, and hiking a mountain was a challenge beyond my strength. But seeing the expectant look in Tom's eyes, my heart softened. I told myself it had been so long since we'd had this kind of private time together. All right then, but I'm a very slow hiker, you know. "You're not allowed to complain that I'm a nuisance," I pouted playfully. Tom laughed heartily and pinched my cheek. "Don't worry. Today I'll be your most dedicated guide. Now eat up. You'll need a lot of energy for the mountain trails, and nobody's going to carry you." The car rolled smoothly out of the noisy city, leaving behind the calculations of everyday life as it headed towards the green suburbs. Throughout the drive, Tom seemed exceptionally cheerful. He played the soft indie rock I loved and occasionally reached over to take my hand. However, as the car began to navigate the winding, deserted mountain roads, his attitude started to shift. He repeatedly glanced at his watch and then stared intently into the rearview mirror as if on guard for something. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I asked with concern, "What's wrong, honey? Is something bothering you?" Tom flinched, then forced a smile. "It's nothing. I'm just watching the road." This stretch is a little tricky. The car drove on for a while longer, reaching a desolate hairpin turn flanked by sheer cliffs and dense forest. Tom suddenly pulled the car over to the shoulder. He frowned, his voice laced with annoyance. "I think there's something wrong with the rear tire. I've been hearing a scraping sound. Can you get out and check if we've got a nail? I'll stay here and keep my foot on the brake." Without a shred of suspicion, I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out of the car. The mountain wind whipped against my face, cold and sharp. The surroundings were deathly quiet, not a soul, not another car in sight. I had just walked around to the back of the car and bent down to look at the tire when I heard a dry, sharp click, the sound of the automatic door locks. Before I could comprehend what was happening, The car's engine suddenly roared to life, a deafening growl, and then it shot forward, leaving me stranded in a cloud of dust and the acrid smell of exhaust. I stood stunned for a few seconds, then panicked and started running after it, screaming, "Tom, where are you going?" "I'm still here, Tom," but the car sped on without slowing, disappearing around a sharp bend. I was left frozen on the desolate mountain road. All around me was only the eerie sound of the wind whistling through the mountain pass. My phone, my wallet, my water, everything was in the car. I had nothing but the thin tracksuit I was wearing. At first, I thought he was playing a cruel joke, or was angry about something trivial. But as time passed and the evening shadows began to fall, fear consumed me. He had truly abandoned me, cast me aside in this wild, remote place like a useless object. I dragged my heavy feet along the road, tears mixing with sweat, my throat parched and burning. Nearly an hour later, when my legs were about to give out and despair began to drown all hope, I was fortunate enough to encounter a group of hikers taking a break by the roadside. They had a satellite phone. I felt like I had struck gold. Trembling, I borrowed the phone to call Tom. I planned to chew him out, to cry, to make him pay for this, but before I could even dial, a strange number called the hiker's phone. He answered, then handed it to me with a grave expression. "Ma'am, it's the county sheriff. They say they traced this number's owner to your husband." My heart hammered against my ribs. A terrible premonition washed over me. I took the phone, my voice shaking. "Hello?" On the other end, the stern, urgent voice of a police officer came through. "Are you Grace, wife of the owner of a silver Ford Explorer, license plate 30G69069? You need to remain calm. Your husband's vehicle went off a cliff about an hour ago. At the scene, we found 2 deceased victims, your husband and another woman." My ears rang, and the world seemed to collapse before my eyes. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the ground. The dry, cracking sound echoed in the silent mountain expanse. I don't clearly remember how the hikers and the police car got me to the county hospital. Everything around me was a blur of colors, a cacophony of sounds that seemed to come from a distant world. My mind was numb, empty, clinging to a single thought in a desperate attempt to maintain a fragile hold on sanity. It must be a mistake. Tom was such a careful driver. How could he have gone off a cliff? And who was the other woman? Why was there another woman in my husband's car? It couldn't be. Just this morning, he made me breakfast. He said he wanted to rekindle our love. The police car stopped in front of the hospital morgue. The grim chill of the place jolted me slightly out of my stupor. A young deputy helped me out of the car. His voice was low and full of sympathy. "Mrs. Grace, we need you to identify the bodies to complete the paperwork. Please, try to be strong." I nodded mechanically, my feet as heavy as lead, as I walked step by step into the room, thick with the smell of disinfectant and the cold air radiating from the metal drawers. The elderly medical examiner gave me a slight nod, then reached for the edge of the white sheet covering the first gurney. The moment the sheet was pulled back, my heart felt like it stopped. My chest tightened with a pain so intense it took my breath away. It was Tom. His face was ashen, drained of all color, with a large, still bleeding gash on his forehead. His eyes were shut tight, as if in a long sleep. Though his face was slightly disfigured from the impact, how could I not recognize the man I had loved and lived with for the past 3 years? Hot tears streamed down my cheeks. I wanted to scream, but my throat was constricted, unable to make a sound. "And this is the second victim." The medical examiner's voice cut through my overwhelming grief, forcing me to face an even more horrifying reality. He moved to the adjacent gurney and slowly pulled back the sheet. When the woman's face was revealed, I froze. My entire body trembled violently, and my legs gave out, causing me to collapse onto the cold floor. It couldn't be. It was Evelyn, my sister-in-law, the wife of Ethan, Tom's own brother. Why was Evelyn here? Why did she die with my husband? But what shocked and disgusted me most was not Evelyn's presence, but what I saw next. She wasn't wearing her usual conservative office attire, but a vibrant red, skin-tight knit dress with a plunging neckline, so short it barely covered her, clinging to her now cold, voluptuous figure. The jarring red of the dress contrasted sickeningly with the pale, lifeless skin, and it was an even crueler irony placed next to the drab, mud-stained, oversized tracksuit I was wearing. Around her neck sparkled a gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant, the very necklace I had accidentally seen Tom looking at on a jewelry website a week ago. I had thought he was planning to buy it for me for our upcoming wedding anniversary. The deputy standing beside me sighed softly, flipping through his notebook. His voice was monotone, but each word was like a knife twisting in my heart. According to the accident report, the car went off the cliff at a sharp curve with no signs of braking. Both victims died at the scene from multiple traumatic injuries. What's notable is the position of the victims when we found them. It was compromising. The female victim was not in the passenger seat with her seatbelt on, but was leaning entirely over into the driver's seat. The male victim's arm was still in a position of tightly embracing the female victim's waist. The officer's words were like a bucket of ice water thrown in my face, extinguishing any lingering shred of pity, leaving only raw humiliation and excruciating pain. Rekindle our love? Nobody's going to carry you? It turned out to be nothing but a despicable charade. He invited me on a trip, abandoned me on a desolate mountain road, only to turn back and pick up his sister-in-law for a tryst. They had died in each other's arms, died in an act of ultimate betrayal to me and to Ethan. A violent wave of nausea rose from my stomach. I couldn't hold it back and rushed out of the room, vomiting uncontrollably in the hospital corridor. I threw up everything left in my stomach as if trying to expel the bitterness and disgust churning in my veins. Among the shattered belongings recovered by the police, I saw Tom's phone with its cracked screen. But it wasn't the modern smartphone he used daily. It was an old, cheap burner phone, the kind people use with prepaid SIM cards for secretive dealings. It turned out I had been living with a two-faced man for years without ever knowing. I sat huddled on a cold plastic chair in the morgue's hallway, my body shaking uncontrollably despite the sweltering summer air. The image of the two cold bodies lying side by side, my husband's hand still clutching another woman's waist, replayed in my mind, making my stomach clench in agonizing spasms. Lost in a haze of despair, I suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps and wailing cries echoing from the stairwell. Before I could process it, a figure lunged at me, and a stinging slap landed squarely on my left cheek, making my head spin and my ears ring. I stumbled and fell to the floor, looking up at the woman standing before me, her face red with rage. It was Margaret, my mother-in-law. She pointed a finger at my face, screaming in the crowded hallway without a shred of decorum. "You jinx! You give me back my son. Why were you in the car with him? Yet you're here without a scratch while my Tom is dead. Did you curse him? Did you two fight and make him lose focus, causing him to drive off the cliff?" Her venomous accusations were like poisoned needles stabbing my heart, robbing me of my last bit of strength to resist. Standing right behind Margaret was Ethan, Tom's younger brother and Evelyn's husband. He wore a black dress shirt, his face a mask of profound grief, but his narrow, cunning eyes were dry, completely devoid of tears. Strangely, he made no move to enter the room to see his wife one last time, nor did he cry out her name as a grieving husband should. He was fixated on the deputy holding the file, his voice hoarse but full of calculation. "Officer, I'd like to ask, are my brother's ID, wallet, and phone still intact? With the car that wrecked, the vehicle registration must be destroyed, right?" When the deputy, looking at me sympathetically, turned to ask about the relationship between the two victims for the report, I swallowed my tears and spoke in a trembling but clear voice. They were brother-in-law and sister-in-law, but when they were found, they were in an embrace in the driver's seat. Hearing this, Margaret flew into a rage like a wounded animal. She tried to lunge at me again to claw at me. "You shut your mouth. Your husband is dead, and you dare to smear his name? You venomous woman." But Ethan quickly grabbed his mother, holding her back. He turned to look at me, his eyes as sharp as a razor. He walked closer, leaned down, and whispered in my ear, his hot breath on my neck making my hair stand on end. His voice hissed through his teeth, full of menace. "You keep your mouth shut. My brother is dead. This family is in turmoil. Do you want to make us the town's laughingstock? If you know what's good for you, you'll tell the police the car lost its brakes. If you say anything else, don't blame me for being cruel." I stared at Ethan, at the cold, ruthless glint in his eyes. His wife was dead, his brother was dead, yet he was unnervingly calm, concerned only with saving face and with calculations I couldn't yet fathom. The viewing for Tom and Evelyn was held at the local funeral home the following evening. The large, quiet room was filled with the heavy scent of lilies, and somber organ music played softly in the background. Margaret sat collapsed in a chair in the front row, wailing dramatically. I wore a simple black dress and stood in a quiet corner, numbly accepting condolences from guests. No one came to comfort me. In their eyes, I was now just a widow under a cloud of suspicion. I could clearly hear the whispers of the neighborhood women sitting in the back pews. Poor Margaret, losing a son and a daughter-in-law at the same time. But isn't it strange? The wife was in the car but came out without a scratch. No one came to comfort me, nor did anyone ask if I was injured in my miraculous survival. In their eyes, I was now just a widow cursed with the sin of outliving her husband, a suspicious survivor. I could clearly hear the whispers of the neighborhood women sitting outside, cracking sunflower seeds. Poor Margaret, losing a son and a daughter-in-law at the same time. But isn't it strange? The wife was in the car with them, but came out without a scratch, while the husband died instantly. Maybe she has some kind of dark magic. While Margaret was busy playing the part of the grieving mother, Ethan moved about the house like a whirlwind, an unusually anxious look on his face. He wasn't greeting guests or preparing ceremonial offerings. His eyes darted around like a hawk, scanning every nook and cranny of the house. He came up to me, with no respect for his widowed sister-in-law, and held out his large hand. His voice was cold. "Give me the keys to Tom's office and his safe. Mom's a mess and can't handle anything. I need to get money to cover the funeral expenses. These things are expensive." I looked up at Ethan, a deep suspicion rising within me. The funeral wasn't even over. His brother's body was not yet cold, and he was already so eager to control the assets. I tried to remain calm and replied, "The keys were in my purse, which was in the car during the accident. The police have it all. I haven't gotten it back yet. For the funeral expenses, I have some cash in the bedroom closet. I'll go get it for you." Ethan frowned, his disappointment and irritation palpable, but he couldn't make a scene in front of everyone. He grunted and turned away, muttering a curse under his breath that I couldn't quite hear. Watching his retreating back, I was struck by a profound sense of isolation. I knew the truth about my husband's death, about the sordid affair between Tom and Evelyn, but I couldn't yet speak. In this noisy crowd, I was like a mute, swallowing my grievances and pain, waiting for the right moment to expose the true faces of these hypocrites. The night grew late, and the stream of visitors thinned, leaving only a few close relatives keeping vigil by the coffins. Taking advantage of a moment when everyone was drowsy with fatigue, I slipped back to our bedroom to change out of my sweat-soaked mourning clothes. As I pushed the door open, I was stunned by the mess before me. The drawers of the wardrobe were pulled wide open, clothes strewn across the bed, and papers and books on the vanity were in disarray. It was clear someone had searched this room while I was downstairs, and that someone could only be Ethan. What was he looking for? Cash, gold, property deeds, or something more important that Tom had left behind? My heart pounded. A gut feeling told me Ethan was looking for Tom's old laptop. It was the computer Tom had used since he first started his business. Even after getting a new one, he kept it and would sometimes use it secretly at night when he thought I was asleep. I remembered Tom once telling me, half jokingly, "This machine is my treasure chest. Even if I die, don't you dare sell it for scrap." I began searching in places Tom might have hidden it, but the closets, under the bed, and on top of the wardrobe were all empty. Ethan had torn this room apart. If it were in any of those obvious places, he would have taken it long ago. I tried to calm myself and recall Tom's habits. He was a suspicious and meticulous man. He would never hide something important where others could easily find it. My eyes accidentally fell on a large bag of rice stored in the corner of the small pantry, connected to the bedroom, where I kept dry goods. An idea sparked in my mind. I tiptoed over and opened the lid of the blue plastic container. The top layer was still filled with smooth, white rice. I plunged my hand deep inside, the cool grains slipping through my fingers. My heart felt like it would leap out of my chest as my fingertips brushed against a hard, square object buried at the bottom. Holding my breath, I slowly pulled it out. It was the old laptop, carefully wrapped in 3 layers of plastic bags to protect it from moisture. Tom had hidden it in a place a lazy man like Ethan, who never did housework, would never dream of looking. I clutched the laptop to my chest, feeling as if I were holding a ticking time bomb. Outside the window, the monotonous sound of chanting and a wooden fish being struck echoed, mournful and desolate. In the dim light of the room, I knew I held the key to unlocking the terrifying secrets my husband had taken to his grave. I quickly hid the laptop among a pile of old clothes I intended to wash and stepped outside, my face as calm as I could manage, though a storm was raging inside me. The next morning, under the pretext of buying more offerings and medicine for Margaret, I carried the bag of old clothes containing the hidden laptop and slipped out of the house. I found a quiet cafe tucked away in a deep alley, choosing the most secluded corner where no one could see me. My hands trembled as I plugged in the charger and pressed the power button. The screen lit up, displaying a password prompt. I took a deep breath and tried our wedding anniversary, then Tom's birthday, but the screen flashed an angry red error each time. I sat there, stunned, trying to rack my brain for any other significant number. Suddenly, the image of the red dress and the death pose of those two flashed in my mind. A bitter taste rose in my throat. I bit my lip and slowly typed in the numbers. The 15th of October, 1995. Evelyn's birthday. The desktop appeared instantly, with its cold, default blue background. My heart felt as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand, shattering into a million pieces. So, even the password to his most important secrets was dedicated to his lover, not the wife who had shared his life. Shaking, I clicked on a hidden folder charmingly named Future Projects. Inside were not business plans or real estate projects, but a series of personal financial tracking files. My eyes landed on an Excel file named Insurance. I clicked it open, and the numbers that appeared before me were so shocking I couldn't believe my eyes. The file detailed 2 life insurance policies purchased 6 months ago. The first policy was one Tom bought for himself, with a death benefit of $500,000, and the sole beneficiary listed was Margaret. The second policy, Tom bought for Evelyn, with a staggering death benefit of $1 million, and the beneficiary was none other than Evelyn herself. I sat there, frozen, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face and onto the keyboard. I, his legal wife, the one who had stood by him through thick and thin from his humble beginnings, was not named in any of his protections. He bought a policy for his mother. I could understand that as filial duty. But to buy a policy for his sister-in-law, with an amount nearly double his own, what kind of affection was that? It turned out he had been preparing for his death, or for some kind of profit-making scheme, for a very long time. He had calculated every move, providing for his mother, providing for his mistress, but leaving absolutely nothing for me, not even a path to survival. My value in his eyes, it seemed, was a perfect 0. I closed the laptop, my chest aching as if pierced by 1,000 needles. This betrayal was not just emotional. It was the ultimate, soul-crushing cruelty of a human heart. A sudden downpour hit the city late that afternoon, drumming a frantic, cold rhythm on the old cafe's tin roof. I sat huddled in a corner, the chill from the rain seeming to seep into my very bones, but it was nothing compared to the ice encasing my heart. Across from me sat Leo, my best friend from college, now a well-known IT engineer. When he received my frantic call, my voice distorted by fear, Leo had abandoned an important meeting to rush here, bringing his professional data recovery kit with him. Leo looked at me with a mixture of concern and pity. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the keyboard, breaking the oppressive silence between us. After nearly 2 tense hours, Leo let out a soft sigh and pushed the laptop towards me. His voice was low and serious. Grace, I managed to recover the cloud data and the deleted text message history from this machine. There's a message sent at 9:30 a.m. on the day of the accident, right before the car went off the cliff. The recipient was Ethan. Trembling, I took the mouse, my eyes glued to the last message my husband ever sent. The stark black text on the bright white screen felt like a death sentence for my trust. I dropped Grace off in the middle of the mountains. She can fend for herself. Now I'm on my way to pick up Evie to close the deal. You take care of cleaning up things at home. Half is yours when this is done. After reading the message, my chest felt as if it had been struck by a sledgehammer, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. So, leaving me on the side of the road wasn't a spontaneous act of anger, but a meticulously calculated part of Tom's plan. He wanted to get rid of me, to let me die slowly in the wilderness or suffer some random accident, so he could be free to cavort with his depraved sister-in-law and seize our assets. The phrase "close the deal" sounded so cheap, so cruel. My life and our years of marriage were, in his eyes, just an item to be liquidated. But what chilled me to the bone was Ethan's role. Tom told Ethan to take care of cleaning up, proving that Ethan knew about the plan and was even an active accomplice. But why? Why did Tom and Evelyn end up dead? According to this message, Tom was gleefully on his way to pick up his lover to enjoy the fruits of his plan. How could it be that just an hour later, they were both at the bottom of a ravine? Was it instant karma? Or had another, darker hand intervened in this twisted play? I looked up at Leo, tears I didn't bother to wipe away streaming down my face. My voice was a hoarse whisper. Leo, he was trying to kill me. He really wanted me dead. But why did he die first? I don't understand. I really don't understand. Leo squeezed my hand, his gaze firm. Grace, calm down. This message proves that Tom's death wasn't a simple traffic accident. There's something much bigger going on here. Look at this. In the photo folder synced to the cloud, there's something else. Following Leo's finger, I looked at a newly recovered image file. It was a screenshot of an electronic receipt. The photo was taken hastily. Perhaps Tom saved it to track expenses or for some other purpose, but it had unwittingly become a crucial clue he never anticipated. It was a receipt from a private auto repair shop called A One Auto and Towing, located in a remote, run-down area on the outskirts of the city, miles from where we lived. The date on the receipt was just 3 days before the fatal crash. I squinted at the screen, reading each listed service item. Oil change, steering system check, 4-wheel disc brake maintenance, front brake pad replacement. The total cost was over $800. A terrible contradiction exploded in my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. According to the police report I had overheard, the preliminary cause of the accident was brake failure while descending the mountain. But how could a car that had its entire brake system serviced just 3 days ago, with brand new brake pads, suddenly suffer complete brake failure? Tom was meticulous about car maintenance. He never spared any expense on regular servicing to ensure safety, especially before a long trip. The fact that he took the car to a strange, out-of-the-way garage instead of his usual dealership was already unusual. And the fact that the car failed in the exact system that was just repaired was far too coincidental to be random. Unless that maintenance was just a cover, or someone had tampered with the car after it left the garage. I remembered Ethan's shifty eyes at the funeral, his calculated questions about the car's paperwork. Could Ethan be involved in this? But Tom was his own brother, and they were supposedly partners in the plan to harm me. Why would he want to kill his own brother? Leo saw the look of horror on my face and said softly, Grace, a car with newly serviced brakes doesn't just lose them, unless the mechanic was incompetent or someone deliberately sabotaged it. Do you remember this garage's address? I think you should pay them a visit, but be careful. Don't alert them. Leo's warning gave me strength. I dried my tears, my gaze hardening with resolve. I couldn't just sit and wait for the police's conclusion. This evidence was on a secret laptop they knew nothing about. I had to find the truth myself, no matter how brutal and painful it might be. I took a photo of the receipt, memorizing the address of the garage in Jefferson County. Tomorrow, I would go there. Not as a wife seeking justice, but as a vengeful spirit demanding retribution. Early the next morning, I took a taxi straight to Jefferson County, following the address on the receipt. A one auto and towing was tucked away in a small, dusty, oil-stained alley, surrounded by scrap heaps of rusted metal. The storefront was dilapidated, its sign peeling. Inside, it was dark and reeked of gasoline and burnt rubber. A few grease-covered mechanics were busy working on old, beat-up cars. The jarring clang of hammers echoed loudly. I took a deep breath, adjusted the white mourning scarf on my head, and tried to look as distraught and ethereal as possible. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning for a portly, middle-aged man with a pockmarked face who was sitting with his legs crossed on a plastic chair, sipping iced tea. Seeing me, he grunted. "Who are you looking for? Car broken down, or you looking to sell?" I approached him, my voice a frail, trembling whisper, as if I were a lost soul. "Hello, sir. Are you the owner of this garage?" I am the wife of the owner of the black Ford Explorer, license plate 30G 69069, the car whose brakes you repaired 3 days ago. At the mention of the license plate and the word brakes, the owner's expression flickered. The hand holding the glass of tea froze mid-air, his eyes darting around as if calculating something. He put the glass down, his voice sharp. "You're mistaken. We fix dozens of cars here every day. Can't remember which is which. You should go somewhere else. I'm busy." I didn't flinch. I took another step closer, my eyes wide, staring directly into his face. My voice dropped to a cold, ghostly whisper. "You don't remember? But my husband remembers very well. Last night, he came to me in a dream. He was standing at the foot of my bed, covered in blood, crying about how he was wronged. He said someone tampered with his brakes, that he died unjustly and his spirit can't find peace." I paused, noticing beads of sweat forming on the owner's forehead. I pressed on. "He also said his spirit is standing right behind you now. He wants to ask you why you did that to him." The owner flinched and instinctively whipped his head around, but all he saw was empty space and piles of dark tires. His face went pale, his hands and feet beginning to tremble. As a mechanic, especially one running a shady operation like this, he was likely superstitious and afraid of the supernatural. He stammered, "What? What are you talking about? I run a legitimate business. If a car is broken, I fix it. Accidents are fate. What's that got to do with me? Don't you try to spook me." I let out a bitter, wild laugh. "Spook you? The police are investigating this case. They said it's a homicide, not an accident. If you don't tell the truth, and they find out you were the last person to touch those brakes, you'll be charged as an accessory to murder. Then it won't just be my husband's ghost haunting you. The law won't spare you either. You choose. Tell me the truth, or have my husband visit you every night." The mention of the police and prison completely broke him. His initial bravado vanished. He looked at me with pleading eyes, his lips, stained dark from chewing tobacco, trembled uncontrollably. He shot up from his chair, pulling me into a hidden corner behind a pile of old parts. His voice was a fearful whisper. "Ma'am, please, spare me. I swear I didn't want to kill anyone. I'm just a lowly mechanic. I do what I'm told." I secretly turned on the voice recorder on my phone and glared at him. "Who told?" The owner swallowed hard, sweat streaming down his neck. "That day, after your husband brought the car in for service and left, about an hour later, a young guy came back. He said he was the car owner's brother and wanted me to loosen the brake fluid nut a little. He said he just wanted the brakes to be unpredictable, to work sometimes and not others, just to scare his older brother a bit, not to kill him." My heart seized. a cold dread creeping up my spine. A young man claiming to be the brother. There was no doubt. It was Ethan. The owner continued, his voice choked with emotion. I was scared at first and didn't want to do it, but he gave me $5,000 in cash, said it was for my trouble. He even promised more after the job was done. I was short on money for my kids' tuition, so I closed my eyes and did it. I only loosened it a little. I never thought it would kill someone. Ma'am, please, don't report me to the police. I'm begging you. I'll get on my knees. He was about to kneel, but I stepped back, a wave of profound disgust washing over me. For $5,000, he was willing to help a monster take 2 lives. And Ethan, the younger brother Tom had always trusted, could be so cruel as to pay someone to sabotage his own brother's car. He wanted the brakes to be unpredictable. Why? To create what looked like a random accident, or to ensure that Tom would not survive the trip? I suppressed my rage and pressed on. What did the young man look like? Was he about 5'10", slightly tan, with narrow eyes and a mole near the corner of his mouth? The owner nodded frantically. Yes, that's him. He was on a gray scooter, wearing a face mask, but I still remember that shifty mole. Ma'am, I've told you everything. Please, tell your husband not to haunt me anymore. I stopped the recording, put my phone away, and looked at the owner with contempt. Fine, for now, I won't go to the police, but you keep your mouth shut. And if I need you as a witness, you'd better show up. If you dare to run or warn that guy, it won't just be the police coming for you. My husband's ghost won't spare you either. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving the cowardly man trembling among the scrap metal. Stepping out of the dark alley, the bright sunlight hit my face, making me feel dizzy. I had the first crucial piece of evidence, but the road ahead was still fraught with thorns and traps. Leaving the dilapidated auto shop with a heavy heart, I took a taxi back home as dusk began to fall. The house was eerily silent. The sound of chanting from a small radio on the altar only made the atmosphere more somber. I was about to go straight to my room to hide the receipt and the recording when my steps halted. I heard hushed whispers coming from the first-floor bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, and in the stillness, Margaret's trembling, fearful voice was clearly audible. I told you I already gave you the money. You took the $20,000, so just disappear. Stop calling and harassing me. My house is in mourning right now. The police are coming and going. Do you want me to die? I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath, my heart pounding. Who was Margaret talking to? Why was she talking about $20,000? A huge sum for a woman who pinched every penny at the market. I remembered a week ago, she complained of dizziness and asked me to take her to the bank to withdraw her retirement savings for safekeeping. She said she was worried about hackers. I didn't suspect a thing then. I just felt sorry for her elderly paranoia. I never imagined that money was for this shady purpose. The person on the other end of the line seemed to threaten her, making Margaret's voice even more frantic. She hissed through her teeth. Don't you threaten me. I did it for my son. I'm not afraid of you. If you keep this up, I'll report you to the police for extortion. Hang up. And don't ever call this number again. A loud click of the phone being slammed down was followed by the sound of the toilet flushing, an attempt to cover up the conversation. I quickly tiptoed upstairs, slipped into my room, and closed the door, my back against the cool wood, sweat pouring down my face. Margaret said she did it for her son. But which son? Tom was dead, so it could only be for Ethan. A terrifying connection began to form in my mind. Ethan paid a mechanic $5,000 to tamper with the brakes, while Margaret paid a mysterious figure $20,000. Was she using that money to stage the scene, or silence a witness? I didn't dare think further. If it were true, the depravity of this family was beyond human comprehension. I texted Leo, asking him to trace the strange number that had just called our landline. Margaret had taken the cordless phone into the bathroom. Leo worked fast. 30 minutes later, he sent the results. The number belonged to a man known as Mike Rizzo, a local enforcer who ran protection rackets and handled debt collection in the border areas of the county. Leo added a warning. "This guy has a reputation for being ruthless. Be careful, Grace." Reading the message, a chill went down my spine. My mother-in-law, a woman who spent her days at Temple, was involved with a loan shark right after her son's death. What was she hiding? Or was she abetting the crimes of her favorite, spoiled youngest son? A few days after the funeral, the atmosphere in the house remained suffocating. Ethan, using the excuse of being overwhelmed with grief, spent his days lounging in his room, having meals brought to him. He didn't lift a finger to do anything, not even to sort through his own wife's belongings. That afternoon, he gestured to me dismissively. "Go upstairs and clear out Evelyn's clothes. Seeing her things breaks my heart. Keep the new, expensive stuff to sell, and burn the old ones for her." I looked at his nonchalant, cold attitude, and contempt rose within me. His wife's grave was not yet settled, and he was already thinking about selling her clothes for money. I silently went into Ethan and Evelyn's room. The strong, distinct scent of her perfume still lingered. Evelyn loved to dress up. Her closet was packed with flashy, expensive dresses and designer handbags, most of them high-quality fakes. I began sorting the clothes. The tight, revealing dresses Evelyn favored were piled high. As I picked up a formal black evening gown, which looked like it had rarely been worn, my hand brushed against something hard in the hem. Curious, I turned it inside out. The stitching here was slightly uneven compared to the factory seam, indicating it had been opened and re-sewn by hand. I took a small pair of scissors from the vanity and carefully snipped the thread. A tiny, bronze-colored key fell into my palm. Etched on it was the number 308 and the logo of a large department store downtown. I clutched the key, my heart racing. Evelyn was a careless, messy person who left things everywhere. Yet she had hidden this key so meticulously. The locker #308 must contain something incredibly important, something she didn't dare keep at home for fear of Ethan finding it. Was it an alibi or an insurance policy for her own life in this web of schemes? I scanned the room one last time to make sure I hadn't missed anything, then quickly tucked the key into my bra. Ethan was watching TV in the living room downstairs. The sound of loud laughter from a comedy show echoed up, jarring in the mournful house. He had no idea that his laziness and indifference had just handed me a crucial clue, a key that could unlock the gates of the hell he was trying to hide. I told myself I would go to that department store tomorrow. Whatever was inside, I had to find out. I disguised myself carefully, wearing a face mask and sunglasses, and took a rideshare to the city's busiest shopping mall. The locker area was in the basement, tucked away behind the escalators, so it was relatively deserted. I glanced around to make sure no one was following me, then quickly found locker #308. My hand trembled as I inserted the key. With a dry click, the door swung open. Inside, there was no money or jewelry, just a plain white document envelope. I quickly grabbed it, closed the locker, and found a quiet coffee shop to examine its contents. Inside the envelope were a dark red leather-bound journal and a folded piece of paper. I opened the paper first. The logo of a well-known private OB/GYN clinic caught my eye. It was a sonogram report. The patient's name was Evelyn, and the doctor's conclusion at the bottom of the page made me freeze. Fetus at 8 weeks. Normal development. Clear heartbeat. The date of the ultrasound was 2 weeks before the accident. Evelyn was pregnant. She was carrying a small life inside her. But why did she hide it? Shaking, I opened the journal. Evelyn's handwriting was rushed and messy. Some pages were smudged with water stains, likely tears. I devoured every line, and the naked truth that emerged made me sick to my stomach. "May, I'm pregnant. It's Ethan's." I was ecstatic. Finally, something to tie him down. But when I told him, he wasn't as happy as I thought. He told me to keep it a secret, that it wasn't the right time. Why? Doesn't he always want a son to carry on the family name? May, Ethan is forcing me to keep seducing Tom. He says the plan is in its final stage, and we can't have any slip-ups. Tom has signed the insurance policy. $1 million, and I'm the beneficiary, Ethan said. Just indulge him a few more times. After he's dead, the insurance money is yours, and the house is mine. Then we can run away and raise our child in peace. I'm disgusted by Tom, but for my child's future, I have to grit my teeth and bear it. 2 days before the accident, I feel so anxious. Ethan has been looking at me strangely lately, with such cold eyes. He keeps asking me where I've hidden the insurance papers. I didn't dare tell him I put them in the mall locker. I'm scared. I'm scared that after Tom is dead, Ethan will turn on me. I have to keep this as my escape plan. My baby, Mommy is doing all of this for you. I hope your father doesn't let me down. I closed the journal, feeling a cold chill run down my spine. The baby in Evelyn's womb wasn't Tom's, it was Ethan's. But driven by insatiable greed, Ethan had ruthlessly pushed his own wife into an affair with his brother to profit from insurance. And more horrifyingly, Evelyn had sensed the danger from her own husband, but she couldn't escape the hand of death. I sat motionless in the cafe, letting my iced tea melt into a tasteless pool of water, as bland as human nature itself. The scattered pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, forming a complete picture of a demon in human form named Ethan. Tom, it turned out, was just a pawn in his younger brother's deadly game. Tom thought he was clever, plotting to kill his wife to take her assets and run off with his lover. But he never realized he was walking into Ethan's trap from the very beginning. Ethan was the mastermind behind it all, a man so cold-blooded he was beyond forgiveness. He used his wife's promiscuity to bait his brother into buying a massive insurance policy. He knew Tom was planning to kill me, so he played along, pretending to help, while actually planning to send both of them to their graves. When the car went off the cliff, he would achieve 3 goals with 1 stone. First, eliminate his brother to inherit the family home and their parents' assets. Second, kill his loose-lipped wife who knew too much, tying up loose ends. Third, pocket the entire $1 million insurance payout for Evelyn, as he was her legal husband and sole heir, and possibly Tom's assets too. If I had died according to Tom's plan, but what made me shudder with absolute disgust was that he had mercilessly killed his own unborn child. In her journal, Evelyn wrote that she had told Ethan about the pregnancy. He knew his wife was carrying his own flesh and blood, the son he and Margaret had always longed for, as they had been married for 5 years without children. Yet, for money, blinded by greed, he was willing to sacrifice both his wife and child. Even a tiger doesn't eat its own cub, but he was more savage than any beast. I remembered his cunning eyes at the funeral, his frantic search for paperwork. He felt no grief, only anxiety about whether his plan had any flaws, whether the money would end up in his pocket. He had traded kinship, marital love, and paternal instinct for worthless pieces of paper. I clenched the journal in my hand, my nails digging into the leather until they drew blood. I made a silent vow to the spirit of the unborn child. Little one, I will get justice for you. Your father is a demon. I will unmask him and make him pay for what he has done. I stood up and walked out of the cafe. The evening shadows stretched long and dark across the pavement, but inside me, the fire of vengeance burned brighter than ever. That afternoon, a man in a crisp suit carrying a polished leather briefcase appeared at my front door. He was an investigator from the insurance company, here to verify information and guide us through the claims process after receiving the notice of death. The moment Ethan saw him, he was like a drowning man, grasping a lifeline. The feigned grief on his face vanished instantly, replaced by an almost obscene eagerness. He rushed to open the gate, his mouth a torrent of welcomes, his hands gesturing for me to make coffee and cut fruit, as if this were an honored guest bringing good news. Not someone here to work on the deaths of his brother and wife. Sitting in the living room, Ethan repeatedly urged the investigator, "Sir, could you please review the files quickly? Our family is in mourning and disarray, and we need the money for many expenses. And about my wife's $1 million policy, I'm her legal husband, the sole heir. So the process should be simple, right? How long until the money is in my account?" He spoke without pausing for breath, his eyes gleaming with greed, showing no hint of sorrow when he mentioned his late wife. I stood in the kitchen doorway, holding a tray of drinks, my hands shaking with rage. Looking at his money-grubbing display, I wanted to throw the hot coffee straight in his face. The investigator seemed taken aback by Ethan's attitude. He frowned slightly, his voice calm. "Sir, this was a serious traffic accident resulting in fatalities, and there are unusual circumstances. We need to coordinate with the police to get their final investigation report. Furthermore, the policy has only been active for 6 months, so our review process will be more thorough than usual." Ethan's face fell, and his tone became sharp. "Unusual circumstances? The car's brakes failed, and it went off a cliff. It's a clear-cut accident. Are you trying to cheat us out of our claim? I'm telling you, it's all there in black and white. Don't even think about backing out." Sensing the rising tension, I took a deep breath, walked over, and placed the tray on the table. I looked directly at the investigator, my voice clear and deliberate. "Sir, I am Tom's wife. I'd like to state that my family has no immediate need to file a claim. There are many unresolved questions surrounding my husband's accident. The police are investigating the possibility of insurance fraud and homicide. Therefore, I request that the insurance company suspend all payout procedures until a final, official conclusion is reached." Hearing this, Ethan shot up as if he'd been electrocuted. He glared at me, his voice a furious roar. "Are you crazy? Homicide? What homicide? How long are you going to tie up this family's money? You might not need it, but Mom does." "I do!" I met his gaze with a sharp, steady look that made him flinch. I replied calmly, "You need the money that badly? Your wife was just laid to rest, and instead of mourning, you're busy counting cash? If you have nothing to hide, why are you so afraid of a police investigation?" Ethan was speechless, his face flushing with anger, but he didn't dare make a scene in front of a stranger. He slumped back into his chair, shooting me a look filled with hatred and menace. After the investigator left, Ethan stormed upstairs and slammed his door. Downstairs, it was just me and Margaret. She was sitting on a wooden bench, fingering a string of prayer beads, her mouth muttering chants, but her shifty eyes followed my every move. I knew it was time to confront this woman, the woman I once respected as a mother but who had willingly aided a demon to harm her own child. I went to my room and retrieved the repair receipt, the phone with the recording of the garage owner, and a photo of the call history with Mike Rizzo. I returned downstairs and sat opposite her. I placed all the evidence on the table and pushed it gently towards her. She glanced at it, her hand on the prayer beads pausing for a beat, but she tried to maintain her composure. "What is this? Why are you showing me this trash?" I looked deep into her eyes, my voice low, filled with pain and utter disappointment. "Mom, this isn't trash. This is proof that Ethan paid someone $10,000 to sabotage Tom's brakes, and this is proof that you withdrew $20,000 to pay Mike Rizzo to cover it up." Margaret's face turned deathly pale, her lips trembling, unable to form words. She swept the papers off the table, her voice a shrill denial. You're lying! You're slandering your brother-in-law, slandering your mother-in-law. I withdrew that money to renovate the house. Ethan loved his brother more than anyone. Why would he kill him? You venomous snake. You're trying to divide this family to steal our assets, aren't you? I gave a faint, bitter smile, tears welling in my eyes. "Mom, even an animal protects its own young. How could you let your son murder his own brother? Tom was your son too. Don't you see him looking at you? You used your life savings to pay for your own son's death. Can you sleep at night? Tom was your son too. He grew up on your milk. Look at his memorial photo on the altar. Don't you see him looking at you? You used your life savings to buy your own son's death. Can you sleep at night?" My words hit their mark, and Margaret began to panic. She covered her face and sobbed like a child, but the words that came out only horrified me more. I didn't want this to happen. Ethan said he was just going to scare his brother a little, make him get slightly injured so he would hand over management of the family business. He said he was suffering, that he was always in his brother's shadow. I felt sorry for him, so I never thought it would turn out like this. Her confession was like another bucket of cold water, extinguishing the last flicker of hope I had for the sanctity of a mother's love. In her eyes, Tom's life was just a stepping stone for Ethan's career. She pitied her incompetent younger son but was ruthless to her dutiful elder son. I stood up, looking at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. Mom, loving your son that way is what killed both of them. One died unjustly, and the other will rot in prison. You can spend the rest of your life atoning for your sins. Knowing that reason was useless with this family and that my safety was now seriously threatened, I decided I had to act before Ethan could retaliate. I went back to my room, locked the door, and with trembling hands, opened my phone. I had no power, no money, but I had justice on my side and the power of social media. I took a deep breath, wiped away my tears, and began to write a long post on my personal page, attaching photos of the evidence with sensitive information blurred out. I didn't scream or curse. I used the calm, grieving tone of a widow, a sister-in-law, to tell this twisted story. I raised questions about the sabotaged brakes, the sister-in-law's diary, the brother-in-law's cold indifference. Finally, I turned on the live stream feature. I sat before the camera in my white mourning clothes, my face gaunt and makeup free. I am Grace, the sole survivor of the accident in the Rockies. I'm speaking out today not for pity, but to ask the public to help me protect this evidence, to help keep me alive until the police can bring the truth to light. Within hours, my post and live stream went viral. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of angry comments demanding justice. The pressure of public opinion began to weigh heavily on this house. Ethan, who was scrolling on his phone in his room, suddenly shot up. He started pounding on my door, his shouts sounding like the roars of a wild beast. "You bitch! What the hell are you doing online? Take it down now, or I'll kill you. Are you trying to get this whole family killed?" I sat silently in my room, my heart pounding, but my hand was firmly on my phone, already connected to my lawyer's number. I texted Ethan, "The more you threaten me, the more you prove your guilt. Thousands of people are watching me. If anything happens to me, you're the #1 suspect." Outside, the pounding stopped, replaced by the sound of anxious pacing and muffled curses. He was scared. His fear was my best shield. Today was the 3-day memorial service for Tom and Evelyn. Relatives from both sides and neighbors came in droves, packing the house and the yard. The thick incense smoke stung my eyes, and the priest's chanting echoed in the solemn air. Ethan, dressed in a black suit with a mourning band, moved among the guests, his face a perfect mask of grief. He bowed to each person, accepted their condolences, and occasionally wiped away non-existent tears. Watching him play the part of the grieving brother and husband made me sick to my stomach. Margaret sat on a bench, supported by aunts, letting out an occasional sob. But whenever her eyes met mine, she looked away, filled with fear and guilt. I stood in a corner, clutching my phone, which was connected to a powerful Bluetooth speaker I had secretly hidden behind the altar that morning. This would be the final stage, the curtain call for this family's hypocritical drama. As the ceremony was ending and people began to leave, I took a deep breath and stepped into the middle of the room. I wasn't crying. My face was strangely calm, the calmness of someone who has been through the depths of pain and has nothing left to lose. I raised my voice, clear and firm. "Aunts, uncles, everyone, please wait just a moment. Today, before the spirits of my husband and sister-in-law, I have a few words to say. There are injustices that, if not spoken of today, will not let the dead rest in peace, nor the living live in tranquility." The noisy room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Ethan's face changed. He rushed forward to pull me away, shouting, "Are you insane? Has the grief driven you mad? Get back inside now." But an elder uncle blocked his path, his voice stern. "Let her speak. If Tom's wife has something to say to her husband, let her. What are you getting so worked up about?" Ethan froze, his hands clenched into fists, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at me. I looked straight into his eyes and smiled bitterly. Ethan, you don't need to be in such a hurry. Your story, Mom's story, and the story of the baby in Evelyn's womb, it will all come to light right now. I pulled out my phone, my finger swiped across the screen, and I hit play. This was the moment of truth. The moment the demon's mask would be ripped off in the light of justice. The large living room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. The only sounds, the wind whistling through the window cracks and the frantic beating of my own heart. My finger pressed the screen, and from the powerful Bluetooth speaker hidden behind the altar, a staticky hiss crackled to life, shattering the oppressive silence. Then, Ethan's voice, hauntingly familiar, rang out, clear and unmistakable. You better handle this carefully. After you get Tom to sign that $1 million insurance policy, you disappear. Don't you dare dream of becoming the lady of this house. When it's over, I'll give you a cut, and you get the hell out of my sight. The room erupted in gasps of shock. Suspicious eyes turned towards Ethan. He stood frozen, his face drained of all color, staring at the speaker as if he had seen a ghost. But the recording wasn't over. Evelyn's voice, coquettish yet anxious, came next. You promised, you know, as soon as Tom is dead, you have to bring me and the baby home. But how are you going to do it? What if the police find out the brakes were cut? I'm so scared. Ethan's cold, mocking laugh was the reply. Scared of what? I've got it all figured out. It'll look like a traffic accident. No one will suspect a thing. You just be a good girl and listen to me. I'll give you a life of luxury. Otherwise, I'll send you and that baby of yours to meet your maker real soon. The recording ended with Evelyn's muffled sobs and the sound of a door slamming. The room held its breath, stunned by the raw, brutal truth that had just been laid bare. The relatives who had praised Ethan for being a good son now looked at him with disgust and fear. Behind that respectable facade was a monster, willing to murder his own brother and wife for greed. At that moment, Margaret, who had been sitting on the bench, let out a piercing, heart-wrenching scream. She covered her ears, shaking her head wildly, shrieking in a panic. Ethan, I told you just to scare your brother. Why did you kill him? Why did you kill Tom, my son? You said you just damaged the car a little. Make him scared enough to give you the business. Why did you do this? Her frantic, blurted confession was the final nail in the coffin, destroying any chance of denial for her precious son, and exposing the blind, foolish complicity of a mother. I stood in the middle of the room, watching the chaos unfold, my heart aching. Tears streamed down my face, not of fear, but of pity for Tom, for Evelyn, and for the unborn child. They had died an agonizing death at the hands of their closest kin. Margaret collapsed, crawling on the floor, prostrating herself as if begging Tom's spirit for forgiveness. But it was too late. You can't unspill water. Margaret's screaming confession was the last straw, unleashing the cornered beast within Ethan. He dropped all pretense of respectability, his face contorted with rage, his eyes bloodshot and filled with murderous intent. He lunged towards the altar, snatched the Bluetooth speaker, and smashed it against the tiled floor. The sound of shattering plastic echoed sharply, but it couldn't erase the incriminating words now seared into the minds of everyone present. Ethan turned to his mother, a cowering wreck on the floor, his eyes holding no pity, only contempt and resentment. He roared, his voice a guttural growl. Shut your mouth, you stupid old woman. Who told you to say that? You want me dead, don't you? Why do you think I did all this? Wasn't it because you were always complaining that Tom was disobedient, that Tom was stingy? You wanted me to be in charge of this house. The surrounding relatives began to whisper. A few of the stronger men started to move towards him, but they were stopped in their tracks by his ferocious glare. Ethan let out a manic laugh that echoed through the mourning house. What are you all looking at, you hypocrites? Tom deserved to die. He had money, but wouldn't share it with his little brother. He looked down on me, treated me like a freeloader. I was just taking back what was rightfully mine. As he spoke, he backed away towards the altar, where a fruit platter sat with a sharp paring knife. I saw the danger in his crazed eyes. My instincts screamed that something terrible was about to happen. I shouted, "Everyone, Be careful. He's going to do something desperate. But before I could finish, Ethan snatched the gleaming knife, waving it wildly to keep anyone from approaching. Margaret, seeing her son with a knife, fainted, collapsing onto the floor. Where's Grace? Where is that damn bitch? I have to kill you. You ruined everything. I'll send you to join your husband in hell. Ethan screamed, his eyes frantically searching for me in the chaotic crowd. People scrambled out of the way, leaving me exposed in the middle of the room. I stared at the shining blade in his hand, my heart pounding, but my feet were rooted to the spot. I knew this was the moment of life or death. I couldn't run. I had to face this demon to end it all. Seeing me, Ethan was like a bull seeing red. He let out a savage roar and charged straight at me, the sharp knife aimed forward. Survival instinct kicked in. I grabbed a nearby wooden chair and threw it at him, then turned and ran for my life towards the yard. The chair hit him with a thud, but in his madness, he seemed to feel no pain. He faltered for only a second before continuing his pursuit, spewing a stream of curses. The yard was in chaos. Tables and chairs were overturned, dishes shattered. The terrified screams of women and children filled the air. I ran for my life, my sandals flying off at some point. My bare feet stung as I stepped on the gravel, but I didn't dare stop. Ethan was right behind me. I could hear his wheezing, death-scented breath at my neck. As I neared the gate, two of my burly uncles managed to compose themselves and rushed to block his path. "Ethan, you've lost your mind! Drop the knife now!" one of them yelled, reaching out to grab him. But Ethan was completely feral. He slashed wildly with the knife to clear a path. A cry of pain rang out. The uncle clutched his arm, blood pouring from a deep gash, and collapsed. Fresh blood spattered across the brick patio, the metallic smell sickening everyone. Ethan broke through and continued to charge at me, cornering me against the fence. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the fatal blow. But just then, the piercing wail of police sirens echoed from the end of the street, cutting through the dark night. Flashing red and blue lights illuminated the yard, blinding us. "Police! Everyone freeze! Drop your weapon!" A voice boomed through a megaphone, sharp and authoritative. Ethan froze, his eyes flickering between rage and utter fear. He looked at the bloody knife in his hand, then at the police officers swarming through the gate. In a moment of despair, he brought the knife to his own throat. But the officers were faster. One kicked the knife from his hand while two others tackled him to the ground, yanking his arms behind his back and securing them with a cold pair of handcuffs. I slid down the wall and collapsed onto the ground, tears streaming down my face, tears of fear and tears of relief that the nightmare was finally over. At the county sheriff's office, the interrogation room was cold and grim. The ceiling fan whirred monotonously. Margaret sat hunched on a wooden chair, her hair disheveled, her swollen eyes staring blankly into space. She had regained consciousness, but it seemed her spirit had died with her son's. Across from her sat a stern-faced detective, though his eyes held a hint of pity for the family's tragedy. "Please, ma'am, calm down and tell us everything." "Why did you give money to a subject known as Mike Rizzo? Did you know about your son's plan to commit murder?" the detective asked, his voice low but firm. Margaret trembled, her thin hands twisting together, fresh tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. She choked out her words. I didn't know he was going to kill his brother. I swear I didn't know." She explained that Ethan had constantly complained about Tom oppressing him at their family business, about being looked down upon. He had poisoned her mind with the idea that Tom, influenced by me, would eventually kick both his mother and brother out. He had sweet-talked her into giving him money to hire someone to teach Tom a lesson. He said he just wanted to mess with the brakes a little, cause a minor accident, maybe a broken arm or leg, just to scare him. Then Ethan would step in, take over the business, and prove his worth to her. Blinded by her pity for her younger son and fear of being left alone in her old age, she had followed his lead, secretly withdrawing her savings to give to him. I thought he was just going to scare Tom. I never thought he could be so evil. When I heard Tom was dead, I was devastated. Ethan came home, knelt at my feet, and said it was an accident, that the mechanic had gone too far. He threatened me, said if I didn't help him cover it up, we'd all go to prison, and there would be no one to tend to his father's grave. I was so scared. I had to do what he said. Margaret sobbed, the cries of a mother who had made one mistake after another, whose blind love had enabled a monster, and who had now lost both her sons, one to a grave, the other to a prison cell. I watched from the other side of a one-way mirror, a bitter sorrow welling up inside me. The woman was both infuriating and pitiful. She had let greed and favoritism cloud her judgment, turning herself into an accomplice in the murder of her own son. The sentence of her conscience would be the heaviest of all, haunting her for the rest of her days. I turned away, unable to watch any longer, and stepped out of the station into the cool night air, my heart heavy. Despite being caught red-handed with a knife and his mother's frantic confession, Ethan, when facing experienced detectives, revealed the true nature of a hardened, cunning criminal. He quickly regained his composure, his face becoming a cold mask, his narrow eyes calculating. He denied all charges of premeditated murder, shifting the blame to everyone around him to save his own skin. When the detectives played the recording of his conversation with Evelyn, Ethan just scoffed. Officers, in this day and age, anyone can fake a voice recording. For all we know, that bitch Grace used some software to put words in my mouth. Evie and I used to joke around like that. She probably just edited some clips from one of our arguments to frame me. My brother was my own flesh and blood. My wife was my everything. I loved them more than anything. He then brazenly blamed the garage owner. He admitted to going to the garage, but claimed he only asked the man to double-check the car because his brother was about to drive on dangerous mountain roads. Maybe the mechanic was incompetent, or maybe he had some grudge against my brother. The $10,000 was for the service and a tip for the workers. I'd never hire a hit on my own brother for such a pathetic price. His duplicity was astonishing, but the officers remained patient. Most despicably, when asked about Margaret, he didn't hesitate to throw his own mother under the bus. My mother is old and confused. She imagines things. I have no idea who she gave money to or why. She was probably scammed or paid for some superstitious ritual and got things mixed up. You can't trust the words of a senile old woman to condemn an innocent man. Listening from the next room, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't believe a son could so readily betray his own mother to escape punishment. For hours, Ethan dodged and weaved, feigning innocence, then complaining of headaches and demanding to see a doctor. He knew the recording and the testimonies were circumstantial, not enough for the maximum penalty if he didn't confess. He was gambling with justice, betting on the lack of direct physical evidence. He believed that as long as he never admitted to touching the car himself, the law couldn't touch him. Seeing his smug look as he was led to a holding cell, I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. He thinks he's clever, but he forgot one thing. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I vowed to myself, keep acting, Ethan. Your show is about to end, and the price you pay will be far greater than you can imagine. The case seemed to stall as Ethan stubbornly maintained his innocence. The garage owner's testimony lacked concrete proof that Ethan had directly participated in sabotaging the car. The investigators were struggling to find the ironclad evidence needed to break his resolve. Just as I began to fear that justice might slip through a loophole, my phone rang. It was Leo. His voice was electric with excitement. "Grace, I found it. This time, there's no escape for him." Leo explained that after I gave him the time and location of Ethan's visit to the garage, he had tirelessly scoured all the security camera footage from nearby homes and businesses. The area was remote, with few cameras. Undeterred, Leo had a brilliant idea. Search for dashcam footage from vehicles that passed through or parked in that area during that time frame. And his efforts paid off. He found a lead on a social media group for long-haul truck drivers. A trucker had posted a video complaining about being stuck in traffic in that very alley on that exact day. The high-definition dashcam footage from the parked container truck, which had been waiting to unload directly across from the garage, captured everything. I rushed to the station to see it. On the screen, Ethan's familiar gray scooter pulled up. He wore a mask and a baseball cap, but his build and clothes were unmistakable. After a brief exchange with the owner and slipping him a wad of cash, Ethan didn't just wait. He took a wrench and slid directly under Tom's car. The camera caught him kicking a tire to test the play in the wheel, his hand expertly twisting the brake fluid bleed nipple. After about 10 minutes, he emerged, dusted off his hands, clapped the owner on the shoulder with a smile, and sped away. This was it, the irrefutable proof. His direct physical tampering with the brake system proved he was not just the mastermind but the hands-on executioner. The lead detective slammed his hand on the table, his eyes alight with grim satisfaction. With this, he has nowhere to run. This is direct physical evidence, enough to put him away for life. Thank you, and your friend, for your invaluable assistance. I stared at Ethan's image on the screen, a small weight lifting from my chest, but tears welled in my eyes. Tom had died at the hands of the brother he had always protected. The truth was out, but the cost was the utter destruction of a family. With the case file complete, I requested permission to visit Ethan one last time before his trial. Sitting across from me, separated by a glass partition, he looked haggard. A scruffy beard covered his jaw, and his eyes were sunken and dark, but his arrogant sneer remained. "What are you here for? To laugh at me? To beg for some pity?" I looked at him not with anger, but with a profound sense of pity for a lost soul. I spoke calmly. "I came to answer a question you've been wondering about. You asked how I found Evelyn's locker key, didn't you?" Ethan froze, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He growled, "How did you know?" "Evelyn hid it so well." I took a photocopy of the sonogram from my purse and pressed it against the glass. "Because I am a woman, and I understand women better than you do. When Evelyn became afraid of you, when she knew what a cold-blooded monster you were, she had to create an escape plan for herself and her child. Look closely. This is your wife's sonogram, from 2 weeks before she died." Ethan squinted at the paper, his face turning from pale to a sickly green. I continued, my voice slow and deliberate, each word a nail in his coffin. The fetus was 8 weeks old. The doctor noted a strong heartbeat, and more importantly, in the diary she left behind, Evelyn confirmed that the baby was yours. She told you, but you, for money and greed, threw it all away. You always wanted a son to carry on the family name, didn't you? Well, congratulations. You got your wish. And you murdered him with your own 2 hands, right alongside his mother, at the bottom of a cliff. At this, Ethan completely broke. He clutched his head and let out a tortured, animalistic scream that echoed down the prison corridor. He slammed his head against the glass, tears and snot streaming down his face. "No, it can't be. My son? I killed my own son? Oh, God." The arrogant, defiant killer was gone, replaced by the late, agonizing remorse of a father who had murdered the child he had longed for. He collapsed onto the table, sobbing like a child, muttering his unborn son's name. I stood up and quietly walked away. The law's sentence might have an end, but the sentence of his conscience would follow him, gnawing at his soul until his last breath. That was the most terrible punishment of all. The trial finally took place. Ethan was sentenced to death for multiple counts of murder with special circumstances. As the judge read the verdict, Ethan stood like an empty shell, his eyes vacant, accepting his fate. Margaret was sentenced to 5 years in prison for concealing a crime. Due to her age and cooperation, her sentence was reduced, but imprisonment at her age was a devastating blow. However, the law's punishment paled in comparison to Fate's. Upon hearing the death sentence for her youngest son, Margaret collapsed in the courtroom. When she awoke in the prison hospital, her mind was gone. She drifted in and out of lucidity, constantly muttering nonsense. The guards said that every night, she would cradle a dirty old pillow, rocking it and humming a lullaby. "Sleep, my child. Sleep, my grandson. Your daddy is away, but he'll be home soon." I visited her once. She stared at me, then broke into a vacant grin. "Who are you? Have you seen my Tom? He said he was going hiking with his wife." "And Ethan?" "He went to pick up his brother. Why aren't they home for dinner?" Looking at the woman who had once scorned me, now a broken, mindless shell living in a fantasy of a happy past, I couldn't help but cry. Greed and blind indulgence had led her to this tragedy. After the trial, my life felt suspended between relief and emptiness. My lawyer helped me sort out the inheritance. As accomplices, neither Margaret nor Ethan could inherit from Tom. I became the sole heir. The $300,000 insurance policy Tom had taken out on himself was voided due to fraud. I didn't want that blood money anyway. I kept the house we had bought together and the money in our savings. The first thing I did was find the hikers who had saved me. They refused any monetary reward, saying my safety and the justice I found was thanks enough. I found Leo, who also refused payment. I was moved to tears. I had lost one family, but found true friendship. I decided to donate a portion of the savings to a children's charity in the hiker's name. I sold the house. It was a prison of memories. I packed up Tom's belongings for charity and burned our wedding album in the yard. As the flames consumed the smiling photos, a small picture fell out, unburnt. It was Tom in college, smiling brightly next to an old bicycle, before money and ambition had corrupted him. I kept that single photo, not out of love, but as a reminder of how easily a person can lose their way. I left the city and moved to a small, quiet mountain town in Colorado. I bought a little wooden house on a hillside and turned it into a small tea and flower shop I named Serenity. My customers were few, mostly souls seeking peace. One day, a woman my age came in, her eyes red from crying. She sat silently for an hour. I simply placed a plate of fresh-baked cookies on her table and said, "A little sweetness can make life less bitter." She burst into tears and told me her story of an abusive, cheating husband. I listened, and then I shared my own story. From that day on, my shop became a sanctuary for wounded women. I helped them find jobs, temporary housing, or simply offered a listening ear. Seeing their smiles return brought a peace to my own heart I had never known. One early morning, I decided to climb the hill behind my house to watch the sunrise. The path was slick from the night's rain, but I pushed onward. Once, I had been abandoned on a mountain in despair. Today, I was climbing it by my own free will. Reaching the top, I watched as the sun broke through the clouds, painting the sky in brilliant hues. I spread my arms wide, breathing in the crisp, clean air. In the face of nature's majesty, human pain and hatred seemed so small. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it. "Miss Grace, this is the prison chaplain. The inmate Ethan asked me to convey his final apology to you. His sentence was carried out this morning. He said he was truly sorry and hoped you would live a good life." I stared at the message for a long time. I felt no satisfaction, no hatred. His death was the price he paid to the law and to karma. It was the final closing of a tragic chapter. I didn't reply. I simply deleted the message, severing the last tie to that dark past. Tom was gone, Evelyn was gone, Ethan was gone. All who had caused me pain were now dust, but I was still alive, standing here, welcoming a brilliant new day. I smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. The mountain wind blew through my hair. I looked out at the winding roads disappearing into the horizon. I didn't know what the future held. Perhaps I would find love again, or perhaps I would continue this quiet life alone. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I had found peace within myself. My life, my real life, was just beginning.